So you can see like the difference between the sketch
Yeah.
and the final. They're pretty similar, but a lot of the detail work comes in when I'm actually sitting down and drawing it. What are some cool pieces of imagery that
Love that.
are unique
Wow.
and weird and are unconventional? I don't know. That was kind of our key for this is make
Yeah.
uncomfortable design work, and it was a lot of fun. The limitations of my carving ability and the way that I draw, they're kind of similar. So when I draw something and then make it out of wood, they kind of look like they're the same thing. My carvings look like my drawings because I kept my carving simple because I didn't know how to do it any better than I do it. And then my drawing style is simple because I just like simple looking things.
Right.
I used to draw so detailed, spend 15 hours on one drawing, and then I would look at it and be like, man, but I really like that weird, stupid, giant, blobby bird on that poster. Why why am I spending all my time on this detailed thing when I actually really am attracted to super simple stuff?
Hey, pals, and welcome back to another episode of Pentool Pals, a graphic design podcast between two pals. I'm Cole from Cole F Design, and I'm here with
Brett Stenson.
Sick. Brett, tell me a bit about you, your title, and where you work.
Sure, yeah. So I work at Young Jerks, a small design studio, design, illustration, packaging, branding, kind of everything studio, I guess, out of New York, but I actually live in Portland, Oregon.
And your title is art director, correct?
It is, yeah. Now it's senior art director, as of like a couple months ago. Um, but when a studio is this small, I think that's more of, you know, an indication of what's to come if we grow or something like that. So,
Sure.
but yeah, in a studio of six, I feel like the roles can interchange quite a bit. Some days I'm just an illustrator or designer, and some days I'm actually leading somebody else. It kind of depends, what what the what the actual case is needed. So,
Of course. Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more about what the meaning of a senior art director is or what they do?
sure. I feel like specifically for our studio, a lot of it has to do with being able to run the project essentially by yourself. It's building a relationship with your client, understanding the brief, sometimes having, you respond to the brief, or you are writing up moods for where the design direction is going to go, and building essentially like a little world that brand will occupy. And I think that's like the primary part of directing is, you're building what the thing is going to look like from an abstract, and sometimes your client has direction for you that you feel like is really positive or inspires you to go off of and build almost exactly what they're telling you that they want. But I think sometimes, people will come to our studio and not know what they want. They kind of, maybe they're at a loss of words, or they don't necessarily have a vision themselves and they want us to come up with that.
Mhm.
So a big part of that director, you know, whether it's creative director or art director, I think a mixture of the two is building what that vision is.
Sometimes the client isn't creative and then they need to lean on a creative to actually provide that sort of creative journey for you.
Exactly. I think a lot of people really like our writing style with our packaging pieces because, there's little copy areas for, I don't know, being funny and like being expressive, or even the style of copy can make it feel like it's from a certain time period, or it has a certain attitude or personality to it. I think a lot of our clients don't know how to do that, so they come to us for that, or just experimenting with illustration styles. Our styles are kind of mixed up, and some of it's clean and vector, some of it's more, I guess you could call it like primitive looking or outsider art feeling. So I think for us, it's just defining that with the client and figuring that out together and leading them to a place that feels like they're being heard, and also like making us excited about it. Like we want to be excited to invent a new, uh, maybe a new style, or maybe mixing like a couple styles together. And I feel like that's the really exciting part, is getting to that place together.
Yeah, that actually leads into a question I had for you, that I was wondering, like, how would you describe your work? And maybe this question has two parts, because it's kind of your specific work, but then also the work that you typically produce at Young Jerks.
Yeah. I would say my work, a lot of it is very emotional for me. Like it's whatever I'm into in the moment. But I think a lot of it is trying to pull from an outsider art influence, whether it's like the line quality or the way things are drawn, or some of the color palettes. Like I feel like it's drawing from a usually a naturalist perspective. I was pretty interested in the outdoors from a young age, so I think a lot of that plays into it. But also, I have like this affinity for really broken design. Like bad business cards and like gas station ephemera, and matchbooks and things that are built by tradespeople, is more than like an artist, I guess. And then also just like I have a lot of fine art artists that I love, that I feel like embody this crude, like sort of not so polished look to them that I try to do in design work. Some of it is kind of limited based on, being able to screen print it or whatever. So I've always simplified my color palette to keep it commercially viable, but also have like a soul to it that's different. I just don't want it to look like it was made on a computer a lot of the
Yeah.
time. So,
And that definitely comes through, and I see that a lot in your work. And I mean, of course, using Illustrator, it's like you can take 2 seconds, less than 2 seconds, and create a perfect circle. But
yeah,
if you were to use and it's funny how the evolution of that has kind of turned backwards, where now it's like, how do you make a digital graphic feel like it was maybe made by hand, when maybe before it was like, how do you make your sketches or drawings look like it was perfect? And
yeah,
so um and I think rolls a lot into the work that I see, what you produce and what Young Jerks produce. I mean, it's the
hmm
same thing together, but
yeah,
it does have that like hand touch or quality feel. And also, like, so when you're producing the work, like, what do you see a lot of your clients ask for? Whether it be like, I see a lot of spirits, or what type of products do you guys produce, or usually like to create in client work?
yeah, totally. We do have a lot of packaging work that we work on. I feel like beverage, I mean, it's just one of those things where you do one beverage design and everyone can see themselves in it. So I think there's this cascading effect where once you start putting work out there, it sort of is a magnet and attracts more of it. So I feel like packaging and branding are like our number one uh, money making clients, or whatever, just like our clients in general. And then from there, I would say we do a lot of brand package work, like graphic asset packs for merchandising, like merch kit or a product line that they're making that they just need graphics to build out a kit. So, like for example, we did a merch drop for a cycling company, and they just make jerseys and hats and socks and whatever they want, water bottles with it. And then we've done that with musicians, like we just did that with Noah Khan, and we've done that with a printing shop in Virginia called Prince Ink. So we've done a lot of these merch slash brand asset packs. I think that people just really like those because that's where we get to do little drawings and then do little like design lockups, and they just drool for that kind of stuff. That's what they want. So we just give them a big, huge, file full of that stuff and just let them go nuts. And I think that that's something that a lot of people really like working with us on. So
Yeah, and I see a lot of, I mean, for anyone creating artwork, it's typical that you put out work, and that work that you put out is what you end up receiving similar to, and it's a good way to let the work you like doing roll into the portfolio or to the new client work that you want to attract. And it's
exactly.
obvious that that's happened, and you guys have such a unique style, like you're saying, that it's a bit more rugged or primitive or hand drawn, and it feels like I walk into a store now and I can just spot out whichever products like has your own touch on it.
That's that's amazing. That's so cool to hear. I mean, that's sort of I feel like that's been a mission for our studio for a while now is how do we stand out against other work, and be unique in terms of our inspiration and our vision for the things that we want to design or draw. I think that that's I don't know, that's a big part of what gets us motivated to wake up every day and work is how can this be different and feel like us or like reflect interests that we have, like I have interests in like nature or whatever, but from a design standpoint I feel like I have interests in like old radio manuals and Mad Magazine stickers and QSL cards from the 70s and the 60s and like trucker ephemera and Waylon Jennings shirts, and it's so much bigger than maybe I can even produce so that you could see it, but it's always there in my mind as like a well to just keep drinking from it.
Yeah. Is
Uh,
that a place that you seek inspiration from? Like, are you a thrifter or do you go to
Oh yeah, I mean, I've
swap
got like the
meets?
worst wolf shirt on that is like the ink is almost not even there anymore. I love that kind of stuff. I'm a collector. Like if you can see my office right now, I have a million different little trinkets that I found over the years. One of my best friends, Mike Alt, from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where I'm originally from. He owns an antique store, so I used to go in there and rummage through stuff and look at old pencil cartridge packaging, and yeah, I don't know. It's everywhere. It's all around us, and it's just a matter of spending the time looking at it and finding your own. Because the internet only has so much. You got to go
Yeah.
find the good stuff.
I find myself all the time just trying to seek new places to find inspiration, but it's common to have the typical Pinterest inspiration from
Yeah,
and it's obvious when you can see which artist gets the inspiration from the same place, and sometimes that could be like a negative spiral within the creative community of just kind of seeking the same inspiration. So it's cool to hear that you're able to find it from ambiguous or unfound places.
totally. Yeah. I mean, I don't blame anybody for wanting to just use Pinterest. Some people don't have access to it, if they live out in a rural area or, they just don't have interest in digging through a thrift store. Like, I get it. But I do feel like there's magic out there from before we were even born that could be, it could spur an idea that you haven't thought of, or make you think like, oh man, that is a really weird layout that I have never seen before. I want to try that, Why not? It'd be fun to remix something from, something you found at Value Village or whatever, like Salvation Army, and
For
make it
sure.
again.
Definitely. I'd love to hear more about like the day-to-day life at a creative agency and what that 9 to 5 looks like for you.
Sure. I mean, for our studio, I feel like it's pretty simple. Like, I wake up in the morning, I start pretty early, so, get my coffee going, and we do everything through Slack because we're all remote, and it makes it a lot easier to be real time with our project feedback. So usually what I do is I'll connect with either Dan Christofferson or Dan Casero or Meg or Victoria, our studio managers, to figure out what we need to get done today. I usually just take it day by day, really, and just figure out what do I have to do, and then usually it's an illustration project or something that, so it could be a small task that's very simple, like updating some nutrition facts on a packaging project, or it's bigger, like, hey, can you start on brainstorming what the big idea is for this client and writing a deck for it. So it can be a mixture of high level stuff or really low level stuff. It's because we're so small, we have to do it all. So, um, but yeah, sometimes I'll be designing an Illustrator, you know, drawing something. Sometimes I'll draw just with pencil and paper and figure it out on my desk. I also have a Cintiq in the background that I draw in Photoshop quite a bit. That's like my favorite place to sketch because it's so fast and it's digital. You can erase it really easily. So, um, but yeah, I feel like that's the main day to day thing. We meet once a week to talk about the traffic
Overarching
of the week.
projects, yeah.
Yeah. So
Do you find yourself working on multiple projects at once, or do you usually focus in on one client like per sector and then allot time that way?
it usually depends. Like, uh, yesterday I was working on a different project than I am today. So usually it's like in a day block where like the whole day I'll be working on one thing. Unless I finish early, I'm notoriously too fast sometimes and don't just take my time. And finish something early and they're like, "Hey, can you, jump on this and since you're done already and help me with this thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." So I think it usually depends on the weight of the project itself, but sometimes I'll do a branding package in like 3 or 4 days and be done for that first round, and then jump on something else. So, yeah,
Yeah, I feel like that's common when I see the smaller agencies. Like, there's 4 or 5 of you, correct?
6 of us total. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of movement, and it's just necessary to be able to kind of wear a couple different hats and keep the projects turning, right?
totally. I mean, I have learned to wear new hats at this studio too. Like, I never wrote anything in my life before working here. Like, never did copywriting, and now I do it all the time, and I'm still like learning to have confidence in it because it's such a different use of your mind, because words have the same level of style and uh, swagger to it that does not like visual work has. It's just through the way you phrase things, or punctuation, like putting air quotes around things that don't need air quotes is kind of like a, or not air quotes, but like real quotes. Uh, Putting quotes around something gives it like a 50s feel, or, spacing between words can make it look like it's from the 30s or 40s. And I don't know, there's something about that, and and just what you're writing itself, like alliterations or dumb poetry that happens when you're just doing an off the top, like off the dome riff on some weird slogan. It just, I don't know. It's a lot of fun. It's just very hard and different from anything I've ever done. But
Yeah. Do you feel like you're able to uh, give an evolution? Like, do you feel like you can upgrade design work by being able to pair it with proper copy?
oh yeah, I think copy is it's honestly like far more impactful and important than I think a lot of designers realize. Like if your copy is kind of lame, it feels like it feels like the design gets lamer for some reason. I don't know. It's just
Right.
if it
Same with
doesn't
like
have a
setting
cool.
and anything else too. I feel like, especially when you're doing branding and you have so many components to what creates a great brand, and if you
Yeah,
have a negative piece to any of those parts, it can kind of like let the ship sink, you know?
totally. And I think that like good copy can uh make you feel something beyond what you're just looking at, you know, if your copy is funny or if it's witty or if it's really serious, like those things affect the way that you're looking at the piece in front of you too. So I don't know. That's something that I never really put a lot of stock into until I started working with the Dans, and I feel like it's totally changed my view on how much what you have to say is as more important really than what you're looking at.
And was this your first agency job, or are you accustomed to agency life prior to working
Yeah.
with Young Turks?
Yeah, I've been at two different agencies before them. I was at a big marketing firm in Milwaukee called GMR for I think I was there for 5 years. That's where I started. I started as an intern there. I worked up to a senior designer, and it was more on the corporate side. Like it was really big event style work. You know, like experiential marketing, as you'd call it. And so that's kind of where I cut my teeth, I guess. And then from there, I moved to Portland and got a gig with this studio called Jolby and Friends, which they shortened it to just Jolby. But um, I was there for 7 years as like an illustrator, designer, art director, sort of multifaceted person or whatever. Um, and that's I think that's where I really learned how to do like drawing work as branding, because at a big agency I wasn't really doing any illustration work. I was doing that stuff on the side at night, you know, after work, just yeah, just for fun, like doing projects with my friends. And then when I met the Jolby crew, they were like, yeah, do you want to do this all the time? And I at first I was like, yeah, of course I would. And to be honest, I got so exhausted like the first couple months because I had never drawn that much before, like day in, day out, always drawing. So it took a long time for me to, well, I mean, it took me a couple months, but it took me a little bit to figure out how to pace myself and not, yeah, not stress out about drawing or make it feel like, oh, if I don't do this right, it's like the end of my career type feeling, you know, when
Yeah.
you're, I don't know. I
It's
was like 20, 25, 26 or whatever, so I was still figuring stuff out, but um
it's kind of like your
yeah,
favorite food. Like if you eat your favorite food for every meal, it's not going to taste very good after a
yeah,
certain
totally.
point. So, I mean, the same way, for at least for I'm talking from my own perspective at this point, where like I love a lot of different parts of design, and so like what I get to do in my day to day is where I get to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But I think
Yeah.
if I didn't have if I didn't have each of those, and I was just doing one after the other, I could possibly experience creative burnout or feel like I'm uh, exhausted after over and over. So
Yeah.
do you feel like you found that balance between what you're producing, or whether it be illustration, copy, branding, merchandise?
Yeah, I feel like there's times where I'll experience some burnout aspect similar to when I first started. I think it, I think it's like a way of, there's something about pacing yourself and not feeling like you have to expend every ounce of creativity on every single project. There's something about that it's very hard to learn to do. At least it was for me. It's still hard for me because I'm really, I don't know. I feel like I want to flex every muscle in my mind when I'm designing something for somebody or like doing a project and feeling, I just have this feeling of like, I really want this thing to be as good as it can be because I'm making it right now. I'm spending my time on it. I want it to be cool as hell and be excited to share it with my family or my friends or online or whatever. And you don't need to do that for like, you know, a label that's going to go inside of the back of someone's t-shirt, like inside. Like you don't need to go that hard all the time, but I don't know. I feel like I am also just sort of a workaholic personality. I got it from my mom. She's the same way, but yeah, I'll work until 3:30 or whatever today, and then I'll probably paint or carve or do something else after work some more.
It just doesn't stop for you.
Yeah. Stupid. I should like do something else. I should, you know, go fishing or find something else to do. But I think I just really like the creative process, and it's become an addiction a little bit.
Yeah, to each his own. I think it's like one of those like work to live or live to work kind of things.
I know. Yeah. I wish I would just live to live once in a while. I need to learn how to be bored. But
No, no, I mean, dude, especially when you're producing such incredible work, it'd be a disservice to the world to not get to see more of it.
yeah, I guess it's just also a disservice to my own mental health to be always on the computer or like I don't know in front of
Yeah,
a canvas or whatever.
give
But
yourself
it's what it
carpal
is.
tunnel and scoliosis just
Yeah,
rotting away making designs.
yeah,
Totally
yeah.
fair.
When you forget to eat until like 2:30 every day, it becomes an issue.
I think a lot of people can resonate with that. I know I can.
Yeah.
Um, and okay, so we're getting into like the monotony, or not the monotony, but just like the small parts of what could be the overworkingness of the job. But I'm curious, like, what would you say the benefits of working with a creative agency would be, let's say, versus freelance,
Hmm.
or just what you've found to be beneficial for working at an agency?
Um, I feel like working at an agency is the way to go, especially straight out of school. Um, I feel like there are so many people at that agency that you can learn from, especially if you're a younger designer or illustrator or whatever, if you're a 3D modeler or you're a whatever, copywriter. I do think that there's something to be said about learning from that environment and being able to work under that kind of pressure and learning new skills from people that you don't really know, soft skills that you won't learn if you're by yourself. Um, and I don't know. I really feel like it's so beneficial. I don't think I would be where I am right now if I didn't get an agency job from the get-go because I feel like it taught me how to talk to people, taught me how to be, charismatic to clients and be able to defend my work, to be able to take feedback that maybe sucks, maybe it's not good feedback, and how do I roll that into something and counter that feedback or take that feedback and turn it into something cool despite the fact that the feedback might not be great. Um, so yeah, I feel like there are people that are meant to be freelancers too. Like they are they have a drive and a vision for the work they want to do, or they prioritize traveling more than sitting at an office, or they, just maybe want to be a business owner, and that's amazing. That's great. And but I do feel like a lot of those people learned that through working at a like in-house somewhere at an agency. I don't think I don't think a lot of students realize when they graduate that most people that were, that they see on the internet that are like famous designers or freelance, whatever, they probably worked somewhere first. They didn't just graduate and go into like God mode level work. Like they learned it along the way through other people. And
Yeah. It sounds like agency is uh, is a huge place for growth, especially it sounds like it's been a lot of
yeah,
growth for you.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's, I met, I also learned like who I didn't want to be, which is pretty important too. I think it gives you a lot of perspective on maybe directing styles or teaching styles that people employed in their or deployed in their work and their work life with other people that they work with that I just really didn't agree with, and I wanted to be different than that. So I think that that was like really, it was very important to see that contrast between who you want to be and who other people are, and figuring yourself out.
Yeah. And so you felt like you were able to figure that out through working through an agency.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then it sounds like even with all the agency work that you have on your plate at any time of the day, you still find time to make work for yourself.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm working on freelance stuff a lot of the time after work. Whether it's specific clients that I've had for a while, or I do my own art too on top of it. So I think that sort of thing is just a part of me. I can't quit it. I just like it, and it's extra money too, but it's also cool to have some projects that you feel like, okay, I'm going to do this one entirely on my own and be able to project manage it myself, come up with the vision myself, draw it myself. Like, I don't know, there's something fun and challenging about that when you're working in a studio all the time where there's a lot of people involved, and it which is honestly it is great. I miss my project managers so much when I'm, just doing my own work.
Yeah.
Like, damn it, I don't want to reply to this email. I want somebody else to help me. Um, but yeah, I'll do a lot of outdoor work on my free time, just because that's something that I at one point decided, I wanted to do a certain kind of work.
Mm.
So before that point, I was doing a lot of motorcycle stuff, and I think one day I woke up and I realized I don't really want to do this stuff anymore. I don't have the strong connection to it that I used to. So I decided I just want to do outdoor stuff, and I just stopped doing motorcycle stuff, stopped drawing it, stopped thinking about it, and just started doing outdoor stuff. And then from that point on, it just spiraled and has been spiraling ever since, for 10 years now.
Yeah. It's good to have foresight of like what you want to create. And the best advice, and it feels like consistent advice that I get on this podcast, is produce the work you want to receive and put
Yes,
it out there, and that will continuously roll into the work that you're going to get. And you were
totally.
able to recognize that you don't want to continue to do the motorcycle stuff. And so one
Yeah.
day you created some outdoor stuff, and now it's led to like continuous projects that you're continuing to create.
Yeah, totally. I mean, people, when they see something like I was talking about with the packaging stuff, when they see it, they can see themselves in it. And not everybody can take the leap from, oh, you can draw motorcycle stuff, therefore you can do Patagonia. Like they can't necessarily see the connection between the two.
Yeah.
So you almost have to consciously almost give that thing to the world and allow people to see like, okay, he understands landscapes or animals or whatever the thing is, or understanding like a vintage uh, backpacking design aesthetic, or having awareness of design trends from different time periods, and that sort of stuff also leads into getting the work that you want to get. If you want to do that sort of look, you have to do it and show it, and then people will pick up on it and want to hire you more for it. So
We can't expect them to have the expressional experience that we've generated over years of working in the space, and
right.
then like sit in front of them and be like, well, you see this, like this can definitely work for all these other places. Like it's our job and especially for art directing to provide and show how it's going to be used or look and before it even is there, right?
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. I feel like the expression, you can lead a horse to water. I mean, you can almost get them to drink it too if you really do it right and show them the thing that speaks to them. And somebody might just, I don't know, you'll make something for no reason, and then somebody will see it and be like, actually, can you draw that thing for me for Howler Brothers or whatever, some other client? And you're like, whoa, that worked. Like, yeah, it's just like fishing. It's bait. It's all bait. It's all just teasers that I don't know. Maybe that's like kind of a overly simplistic view of it, but I feel like if you put the work out there, people will find a reason to want to work with you.
Definitely, especially when they resonate with the work that you're producing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, all right, you do both the agency work and you do your own freelance work, and you also do your own personal work. Like, what
Mhm.
do you find is the easiest to seek or to find inspiration to create?
Hmm. I feel like I feel like the design work stuff is a little bit easier for me because I know I'm solving a problem for someone else, and they have a perspective on it that they want something solved, and I can figure out a way to solve something, and then they can react to it, and we can kind of like ping pong back and forth. When it's your personal work, it is just you. And sometimes, I don't know, sometimes you feel like, oh, is this like good enough to make, or is this like worth painting and spending time on? And, you can kind of put yourself on the back burner a lot,
Mm.
if you're not like being persistent, or I don't know, like there's something about it.
How do you feel like you solve that when you're in the rut during your own personal work? Because you don't have a client saying like, this is the deadline and this
I
is what
know.
needs to get done. There's really no parameters other than yourself telling you to get through to the end. Like, what
I
are,
don't know, Cole. I don't know.
it's the golden question you still have yet to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably harder on myself than I need to be, but I feel like I'm pretty good at, if I have an idea, I'll just sit down and make it. But it's taken me a long time, and sometimes I'll make pieces that I'll make it, and I'm like, I don't even know where that came from, but whatever. It was a piece of art that I wanted to do, and I
Mhm.
just made it, and that's better than not, you know. Um, but sometimes the inspiration is like based on travel, or going, like going through an experience, or meeting people, or listening to a record, or whatever the thing is, and I feel like it just happens. And I feel like if you don't make it, like if you don't make it and just like let it simmer and fade away, it's gonna be harder for you to want to make it later. So I usually like I'll intentionally try to just if I get an idea, I'll try to make it in that week, at, if not the next couple days, because you slowly like start to question whether that idea meant anything to you in the first place. And then if you wait like a month, you feel like you're forcing yourself to do something, and then it feels trite and weird, and I don't
Yeah.
know.
Sounds like you give yourself small parameters so that you basically form into your own client so that you can give
Yeah,
yourself an end goal. Then you
yeah,
can look at the end result and say, hey, that worked or
yes,
it didn't.
totally. Yeah. I mean, with my carving work, like I basically will say like I'm gonna make these 5 things, and now I just need to find time to make those 5 things. And I think it's easy to overthink what those 5 things are gonna be. So then you him and haw about it for a month, and then you just don't, you end up not making anything, and then you feel shitty about that because you're like bummed that you haven't put out anything creatively in a while, and then it just gets in this weird cycle. So
Yeah.
I'll just sit down and like make something out of clay quick. Oh, this is cool, sweet. Now I'm just gonna start cutting it out of wood and just go for it, and just keep the momentum going, because if you don't, it's very easy to feel like, oh yeah, I had this idea 2 years ago to make this thing, I never did it, and that sucks, because it's, you have the capabilities to do it. Sometimes it's just the confidence or like the self regulation of your free time or whatever the thing is, but yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's wild too. You just have like a blank canvas or piece of paper in front of you. And like, I wish sometimes I could look at that and recognize like what's going to happen in the next 3 hours and like know what this end result's going to be. And like, sometimes I'll have it in my head. Other times, like when that image of what's in my head is really blurry, is like when I don't really know at all what is going to end up happening within like the time that I'm going to devote to this. And
Yeah.
so, um, especially being an art director, I think finding the parameters and the route can help let the creative process happen a lot easily or much more easier.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I'm gonna go through like this the whole process with this, but so this was a calendar that we made at Young Jerks for the Parks Project. Parks Project is this brand that makes a lot of national parks related merch and products, and what have you. That I believe they partner with the national parks on all this stuff. So they hit us up to do this design package for them for the 2023 calendar. So basically, this is just all of my sketches that I did for the calendar layout. All this is sketched in Photoshop, so it's just simple haggard pen tool drawings, nothing special. Um, and this was just how I figured out what my layout was going to be, how my type was going to look. Um, and these are just like a couple covers that I had tried to experiment with. Just figuring out what is the drawing style. This style I wanted to do a little bit more crude and like paper cut feeling, just to have a little bit more of a, I don't know, like a crunchier granola-y kind of vibe to it that's maybe different from anything they'd made before. So um, just trying different layouts and different feelings for it. But this is the one we ended up going with. And then from here, these are all the interiors that I had sketched out. So each
So
month
cool.
had its own park that we took the essence of that park and turned it into a little vignette. And then below the blank spaces where the dates and stuff would go. But each park has its own feeling, obviously. Like some
Wow.
of the stuff is, this is in the Northwest. This is Yosemite, I believe. And then, this is in Utah. Like, um, everything has its own fauna and flora. So we had a lot of fun playing with the elements that make up that place, and how do you make it feel like you're there.
For sure. Yeah,
uh,
and you're able to keep that same style of art consistent throughout all these illustrations.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, with a calendar, you have a place where you can really run wild with really anything. It's kind of like open canvas.
I'll show you the final of it, but
Oh wow,
so it got obviously more colorful, and
which is cool too.
still,
You still were able to keep this kind of hand screen printed feel, like somebody was still squeegeeing this onto a poster.
yeah, totally. I wanted it to have that like fountain printing feel to it.
Hmm.
And then each page is just a single color on the paper color, and you know has like a beefiness to it, but it's also not. I don't know. It doesn't look like it was made on a computer. It was. All of it was drawn in Illustrator with just like the pencil tool, but um, I wanted the lines to all be imperfect, and that was really important to me for it to feel folky and you know sort of outsidery. So
What's impressive is you drew all of your sketches like with their outline, with the intention of putting a fill in them, and I,
mhm.
is does that really? It must help with the way that these feel um, more rough around the edges, and it gives it kind of that cutout feel.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I feel like if you look at my work closely, you'll realize I draw in silhouettes. Everything is silhouette based. Like everything, like everything I draw, I try to focus on. Does it have a strong outline to it? Like, is it easy to spot? Is it, does it have that negative space considered in every piece? So yeah, when I sketch stuff, it's mostly about understanding the outlines and making sure that it reads really well. Um, I think I don't know if it comes from like tattooing or I have a lot of tattoos, so I feel like that's like a little bit of a thing that I had learned at one point with getting tattoos. Um, I can show you also some other sketches.
Yeah, yeah. Is your sketch work consistent, where you're usually just producing the outline with the intention of the fill?
Yeah, I mean, with that other one, with the calendar one, it was a little bit more focused on outlines because I knew there wasn't going to be a second color. Like it was just the one color. So I had to think about the push and the pull of like the positive and negative space a lot more. Whereas like some of this other stuff, there's 4 or 5 colors in these designs, so it's a lot easier for me to, just draw what I think I'm gonna do and figure it out later. But some of the stuff is, uh, I guess some of it might be simpler, but yeah, just like sketching out a strong silhouette shape and filling in the details. I think that that's kind of been my mode of understanding things. I don't know why, like from an illustration standpoint, it's just where my brain instantly goes is what does the silhouette look like first, and then um, it makes like the elements clearer to me, I guess. But
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I love how even no matter what the no matter what the imagery you're gonna illustrate is, like you find ways of making it feel unique to your own personal work.
hmm I try to. I mean, I sort of. I mean, like this one is kind of an exception to the rule, but like a lot of the stuff that I draw, I try to draw it with the same tools in my mind and the
Mhm.
same, shapes or um, I put like restrictions on myself
Yeah,
essentially. So I feel like that's where a lot of consistency happens is using
yeah,
those same rules over and over. But
yeah. Sometimes even secondary elements, or maybe it's like the line work, or um, yeah, like you said, even the shapes that you're using, whether it be within like these wings or
Hmm.
secondary details in the snake or some of the outdoorsy like imagery. Wow, look how they ended up.
I
All this
know.
Howler Bros work is so cool, and I feel like I can recognize when it's something you create.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, I feel like Chase, the guy that the owner that I work with, I think he's the owner. Pretty sure he's the owner. Um, Working with him is so easy because he's just so supportive of anything I do. Like he's just uh, he didn't ask for like a gator. I just drew it, and like, yeah, that's sick. Let's do it. And sketched it. He picked it, and then I just took it to digital. So you can see like the difference between the sketch
Yeah,
and the final. They're pretty similar, but a lot of the detail work comes in when I'm actually sitting down and drawing it.
of course. Yeah, I think that we talked about it briefly in some of our previous conversation too. Is like, how do we expect the client to like really understand or grasp like what's in our head? And maybe if he was to tell you to like draw a gator, and he was telling you to have it go fishing, like I don't know
Yeah,
if you would have gotten to the same result here. You know,
yeah,
um,
totally. I mean, I'm always open to that kind of stuff. Like if people have specific things that they want me to do, um, it's happened in the past. Like some pieces that I've done with him, uh, that like my hat, for example. I don't know if you noticed this, like
yeah, I
Howler
was
hat.
looking at it earlier.
So Chase was basically like, "Hey, we want to do some seabirds. Will you do a frigate?" And I didn't even know what a frigate was. I had to Google it, and then I realized, oh, I'd seen that before. Like I know what that is. And he essentially said, can you just draw this bird? And I drew a bunch, and then ended up with that. So, but it doesn't really look like like if you Google frigate, it doesn't look like a anatomically correct frigate by any means. It's my own stylized version of it. The limitations of my carving ability and the way that I draw, they're kind of similar. So when I draw something and then make it out of wood, they kind of look like they're the same thing. My carvings look like my drawings because I kept my carvings simple because I didn't know how to do it any better than I do it. And then my drawing style is simple because I just like simple looking things. Like
Right.
I used to draw so detailed, spend 15 hours on one drawing, and then I would look at it and be like, man, but I really like that weird, stupid, giant, blobby bird on that poster. Why why am I spending all my time on this detailed thing when I actually really am attracted to super simple stuff? So
Yeah, that's funny because that was a that was a theme I just had with a previous guest, and I even find it in my own personal work, and I wonder if it's like a childhood thing where we're trying to overcompensate for what possibly could be bad work in our early days of
hmm.
like trying to add all of these bells and whistles and extra flourishes and gradients and whatever it may be to try to like overcompensate what could just be the end result of like this like work that's just doesn't look that great. And
Yeah.
then when we improve with our years of experience, we end up stripping back all the layers that were like never really needed in our early days of work. And then it becomes the unique style that like any of us see today, whether it be yours or any of the previous guests. And then it's just like the bare bones, perfect elements that like should have only been there from the start.
You nailed it. You nailed it for sure. I think for me, I overcompensated through drawing because I could. I was capable of drawing, so therefore I did as hard as possible. But I was also afraid to, you know, not do enough. So I would just keep drawing and keep drawing and keep drawing. And there was I know for me personally, like I've always had this weird fear thing in the back of my mind about being an artist and like being judged or having having my whole ass out there on Instagram and like people looking at it and being able to say whatever they wanted about it. It always scared me. So from that transition point of going from I want to do this drawing style, which was very different from what I draw now, to what I draw now, it was hard because I had to accept a side of me of that I don't know, I wasn't able to before, which was I just want it to be simple. I don't want it to be this complex thing anymore. I want it to be, I don't know, like I want to be able to draw this in an hour if I want to, and
Yeah.
not feel like I need to spend all this hard like effort on every single piece of art because then it's not fun. It's just
Yeah. There's a
so
weight lifted for sure when you realize that you don't have to be like the artist that you may have looked up to as a child, where you're like really amazed by all these crazy um, design styles or skills that like you thought you had to have to become an artist or just to put out work that you are stoked on, and then you could realize that you could just be unique to whatever style you resonate most with.
yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, there were so many like graphic posters that I really liked that were super simple, but I was afraid to accept that I could also do that if I wanted to. And it took a lot of convincing. It took a lot of like meeting the right people. I know I give a lot of credit to the Jolby studio for that. Like they helped me come out of my shell and like figure out what like helped me figure out what I wanted to do with illustration and design. And yeah, now I do what I do now because of that, because I got more confidence or whatever, more understanding of myself. So this was a Young Jerks project, so you'll kind of see how we present things to our clients.
Mm.
This was a surf brand out of New Jersey called Sly Man. This was actually a project that I collaborated with another art director on. So there's two
Mm.
art directors on it, and we essentially ping ponged off of each other and figured out our look and feel together, and then made work in tandem at the same time, right next or not next to each other physically because we're remote, but um, like the same day, just cranking stuff out and trying different things. So um, we had a loose idea of who they were and what they were all about, and it was kind of cool, esoteric relationship with water and like this. I guess you would say was more of a heady sort of brand brief compared to what we're used to. Sometimes it's just we're making a sparkling water and we want it to feel like it's X. This
Mm.
was a little bit more, I guess.
Consolidated.
Yeah, or like it had like our client sent us like stuff to read, like
Oh
poems
wow.
and literature and stuff. Like you guys should read this and think about like how does that influence your work. And then we made this brand based off of all that stuff. So a lot of it was collateral that would go with your merch and figuring out the system for them and how to you do sizing and hang tags and all that stuff and woven labels, and just use this loose hand look for everything, and figure out like what are some cool pieces of imagery that
Love that.
are unique
Wow.
and weird and are unconventional. I don't know. That was kind of our key for this, is make
Yeah.
uncomfortable design work. And it was a lot of fun. Some of it's like kind of ugly on purpose and not well defined, and some of it's a little bit cleaner, but for the most part, it was sort of this like stream of consciousness process of just draw things, just follow like the weirdest corners of your mind, and just go all in on it. And Kelly Thorne is the other designer that I worked with on this. She's amazing, and we both got to draw a ton. And it was cool how at the end of the project everything sort of fell together through color. I think that's like the magic of graphic design, is you can just make everything the same color, and sometimes it just falls together and works. And so, she made work, I made work, and it all really well mashed, which was just cool to see.
Do you do you feel like you get less pushback from clients when you propose decks that include mock-ups and
Yes.
a more
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. I feel like, so we have a kind of unique process too, where a lot of this stuff we just made it. Like
Mhm.
we, most of our projects we don't sketch and send a sketch. We just make the thing. Like we
Mhm.
just sit down and design it, and we don't necessarily get approval on a concept before we digitize it. So I think that always helps too, because a lot of clients can't see the vision or the end result.
Yeah.
Chase could with the Howler stuff. He was very good at it. He saw the sketch and he's like, I get it. I see what it is. And he knew what my work looked like, so it was very
Right.
easy for him to translate. But some clients don't have that. And I think putting it on a mock-up is doubly helpful, because they can see the sweatshirt and be like, "Yep, I would make that. I would buy that. Let's print it right now." Or, there's other pieces in here where it's like on a tote or whatever. Yeah, like, "Yep, that's a sick tote. I want that." And just
Right.
print it,
It,
Um,
yeah.
so
The consumer behavior is just like so much easier than having to have a client do the extra legwork of visualizing what it's going to be or how you're supposed to purchase.
exactly. Yeah.
Even though like even the opposite, like that could make a great hat maybe, and they they'll only print it on a shirt and crew neck now because
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
directed
yeah.
them to do it. But I think in the best way possible, that is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a cool way to inspire your client to try something they hadn't thought of. Like for example, this one, like, hey, what if you did a wooden installation of this thing and had it
Wow.
cut out and made
You're
in,
like, I'll make it for you. This is like
yeah.
what I'll start
3 weeks.
producing after work today.
I'll need 3 weeks to make it. But yeah, I don't know. There's something really great about mock-ups. It does a lot of work when it comes to helping somebody visualize something that, especially with simple graphics, like sometimes people judge it a little bit like, oh, it's just so simple. But if it's clever and really interesting, and then you see it with all this confidence on this tote, like, yeah, man, that's
It
really
changes the
cool. And
dynamic.
I don't know. It just helps. Like if I just saw a deck full of this stuff, I'd be like, okay, that's cool, but like, how am I gonna make shirts or like a brand out of this? But if you see all of that
Yeah.
work put into showing it coming to life, I think that's the gold for sure. But
Is this pretty typical in the amount of imagery, secondary elements, graphics that you'll propose within a deck?
um, yes, I mean, I think it depends on the actual the scope itself. So sometimes it'll be like that one was more of just make us a ton of stuff for this one brand, and we
Mhm.
know what the brand, or they already have an established brand, they just wanted more stuff for it. Whereas like I can show you a rebrand thing for Prince Inc. I got his permission to do this stuff is from I think it's from yeah, almost a year ago, but he's still working on launching the rebrand. But this stuff is so different from the stuff that he actually went with, but I think it's really cool, so it'd be
Yeah.
worth showing. Um, but this had more of like there's three different or like three or four different like directions mixed into it. Um, so there's like logo stuff and uh, like concepts for stickers and signs and all that stuff. But there's multiple directions kind of intermixed in each other. And I think that that's like, I don't know, that's a different approach that we have too, where there could be multiple directions in one, or it could be one big solid direction.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, I think that especially with these decks and when you're basically not asking for permission, but if anything, you would have to ask for forgiveness, right? Because you're just going to go ahead and produce this work. I
Yeah.
think the only way that you would be able to miss is if it was the entirety, like the overarching feel, or like how do I say that? Like if you're just off on what the vibe was supposed to be,
Yeah.
and
We
then
we've
yeah,
definitely done that. We've definitely thought of a cool vibe and then completely missed, uh, which is funny. I like the vibe of the project that I'm talking about, and it was really unique and weird, and the client just didn't get it at all. They're like, what is this? This is bananas." So we had to redo it. But I think that's kind of on. I feel like that's rare, to be honest. Like a lot of the time when we do these finished product decks, they're so believable that it's a lot harder to argue against it. Unless,
it's almost like it's real and it's working well.
yeah, it's harder to push. It's harder to shoot holes through something that looks complete.
Mm.
Like it looks done, and a lot of our clients are really like wowed by that. Instead of the incremental, like do a sketch, get an approval on the sketch, then do the logo, then get an approval on the logo, then do the
Right.
rest of the brand. We do the whole brand at once. So there could be five or six logos. You might pick the logo you want to use on everything, but we're not going to tell you necessarily what that is. You can decide, which is very different from, I think, a lot of branding projects where they're like, we want a logo, and then we want secondary type, and then we want colors. For some of these brands that we do, it's like, here's 15 things. Like, I don't know, they're all your brand. They all say what your name is and have the feeling of your brand. So I think that's like a lot more fun too for a designer because you get to just you don't have to hang your hat on that one thing. Like you can have a bunch of different options. So
Yeah, I find myself in the opposite side of that, in the hamster wheel of like client revisions, because I do think that if you're not showing them in use cases like you've just shared, that like
Mhm.
they can have tunnel vision on the edits, needing something to be tweaked to be perfect, when in reality, like there's such a bigger picture of what the brand or the use case or whatever you're designing could be.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Uh, it's a hard thing to get out of for sure. I've been there. Hyper focusing on any part of one homogeneous or like it'd be like focusing on you can pick apart your one finger and be like, oh, you have a hangnail and this nail is not cut short enough. But imagine judging a person off of that, like there's more here, like there can be a lot more to focus on. And I feel like when you show a logo like in black and white on a white page and that's it, you could probably shit on just about every logo ever. But seeing it in an inspirational context of on a shirt or on the side of a building or, you know, with great photography, we'll edit mock-ups or edit photography that we found online to like make it fit in this world with this different lighting or I don't know. I think that that's like a part of our, case study stuff too. Is like show the work in context. Like do a photo shoot. uh, make the work that you made look sexy. Don't just like upload vector flat images of the logo. Like if it, especially if it's on packaging, get the whole packaging, take photos of it, you know, sell it as hard as you can, and make it look like it's a real thing, and fake it if you have to, basically.
That was beautiful. That was one of my favorite takeaways, and I like the finger analogy. I think that was
Yeah,
that worked really well. And maybe
I
that was on the
swear I'm a
spot
good
for you.
person.
And I think this is a great way to close the episode. And I really appreciate you sharing the work as well. I think that it's really
Totally.
fun to run through a lot of the decks you've prepared, and especially for the freelance perspective, it's incredible to be able to see the furthest point of what agency work can absolutely do. And you guys crush it, and you specifically, Brett, crush it. So
Thank you.
thank you for joining me and talking about it, and for being a pal.
Cool. Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for hitting me up. It was a lot of fun.